Hello and welcome. This week we have another video on Nichol Kessinger, and we're just looking into some more of the theories that surround her in this case. Now, this one is looking at some of the more unusual theories that have cropped up, including magic and witchery and all that kind of stuff that I've really had to research because it's not something that I've ever really been into. So if it sounds like something you might enjoy, please stick around and we're going to jump straight into it. My name's Fiona and this is Case Continued. Okay, case crew and people who are just jumping into my videos to see what it's all about. I just want to set the record straight, and it's the last time that I'm going to do it because I really feel like I'm repeating such similar things over and over when I actually could be spending this time doing more researching. I've noticed some comments, again, suggesting that I'm taking Nichol Kessinger's side or somehow defending her. And again, I've been asked if I'm Nichol Kessinger, and that's why I'm not on the screen in these videos, because I'm obviously hiding my identity. While that's a very interesting storyline, it's also completely out there. Guys, it really is, it's out there. I will be on screen eventually. Just let me finish redecorating my office first, please. It's a bomb site, and everything has had to be cleared out for the painting and wallpapering. I can't set up my camera elsewhere because the locations don't work in terms of distractions. I have pugs. They're allowed everywhere except the office. And pugs are noisy and they don't leave me alone. So currently, I just don't have the filming space. I'm not hiding my true identity as Nichol Kessinger. That's done. Let me be very clear. This channel doesn't take sides. It takes facts. It takes original source documents. Justice isn't about choosing a team. It's about understanding what actually happened based on evidence, not emotion. I will never blindly defend or condemn anyone. That includes calling things out when the public narrative doesn't match the source material, even if it's unpopular and people start writing me hate comments. Now, a viewer has suggested that I should be more like other creators who've grown quickly on their channels by focusing heavily on this case, mainly around Nichol Kessinger, and pushing a specific narrative. They've said that if I changed my stance on finding things to try and explain some of Nichol's behaviours away or debunk some theories about her, a specific YouTuber would play my videos and encourage their viewers to come and follow me. Saying a creator that some of you might follow won't help me get subscribers, well, that's absolutely fine, because I'm not here to chase someone else's audience. This man has his own lane, and while he's popular, I respectfully disagree with his style. This channel is about accuracy, transparency, and doing the research. It's not about speculation, drama, or sensationalism. I worked with criminals. I have a background in the justice system. I take true crime really seriously. This isn't a what's only channel. It's just the first case I'm covering in detail because so much misinformation exists around it. But there are so many other stories that need to be told, and that's where I'm headed next. If you're only here for Kessinger drama, conspiracies, or confirmation bias, this probably isn't the channel for you, and that's okay. I respect that. But if you're here for evidence-based true crime, unpacking what we know, not just what we feel, respect for victims, facts and critical thinking, then welcome, because you're in the right place. And as a side note to the comment about not being promoted by another specific YouTuber, I'd personally rather grow slowly and authentically than attract a large audience overnight that only sticks around for one case or one narrative. That wouldn't help me anyway. And this community would be full of people with only one point of view. I'd rather people were genuinely recommended my content for it being unbiased and researched, and that people decide to stick around for more cases and more true crime discussion. I want people to stick around for what my content is worth to them, not what someone tells them it's worth, because it's solely based on one opinion. I won't change the format of these videos, and I won't stop looking at all angles of any case just to get myself admitted into a circle of creators who only take one view of things. Thank you to those of you who see the bigger picture. There is a lot more coming. And if this community takes time to grow because I'm not being recommended by another YouTuber, then so be it. But at least the growth will be genuine, and those supporting this channel will be here for all the right reasons. Now, on to Nichol Kessinger and the mysterious truck. One neighbour said she saw a grey truck. Another claimed a similar vehicle was circling the neighbourhood around the time Shanann Watts and her daughters were murdered. Could this truck belong to Nichol Kessinger, or even her father? Or is this just another rabbit hole in a case already clouded by speculation? Let's have a look at the statements, the evidence, and ask the hard question. Is this theory credible or completely debunked? This truck has been mentioned in comment sections, theory videos, and discussion threads for a long time, thanks to a creator finding evidence of it being tied to Nichol. Again, I'm not going to name any names. I think anyone, though, who's followed this case from the start will be aware of the most prominent internet theorists. Some suggest that this truck belonged to Nichol Kessinger or her father, Dwayne, and used it as evidence that she was more involved than the official story suggests. But what is actually true about this grey truck? Let's separate fact from fiction. On the 13th of August 2018, the morning Shanann and her daughters went missing, Chris Watts' neighbour, a lovely woman named Betty, reported seeing a grey or silver truck parked near his house. She was very clear that it wasn't Chris's own truck, which was larger and more recognisable. The other vehicle, she said, was smaller and unfamiliar. Betty mentioned that this grey truck was still parked near the home into the early afternoon. Some people do conveniently miss this little snippet of information. But let's jump right into Betty's interview.
Anything different over the last, 2 days, 3 days? Odd vehicles, odd noises, odd lights?
There was a truck out here yesterday. In fact, that's why I thought you were here yesterday. Maybe someone complained about that I hadn't seen before.
What type of truck?
It was kind of almost a steel gray.
Okay.
Don't ask me.
Okay.
Year. But that was late afternoon. The dad has a great big truck, and it's gray. But this one was smaller.
Okay.
This one was small.
Then,
but I hadn't seen it before, so I...
Any markings or stickers or anything that would be weird? You wouldn't by chance remember if the plate was green or red or...
No, I kind of just glance. I don't pay any attention because I believe he owns his own business or something, because he always has a truck parked there, so kind of...
I gotcha.
I just kind of noticed it wasn't the normal truck.
Was it dirty by any means?
No, it wasn't. And it couldn't have been that old.
Okay. How long was the truck sitting there?
I saw it yesterday morning around 5:15 a.m. because I go to the gym then.
Okay.
It was still there when I got back at 6:45. And then it was there around, I think, noontime.
Okay.
And the reason I mention it is it was gone by the time you guys left yesterday.
Okay. Well, did you see the police in the area while that truck was still here?
See, I can't see it from my house.
Gotcha.
So it could have been gone by then.
Okay.
But this is unusual. Very quiet neighborhood.
Right. Yes.
So here's the problem. Betty didn't get a license plate, the exact model wasn't noted, and no surveillance camera picked it up clearly. If a surveillance camera did pick it up, then we haven't seen it and been privy to that information. There's no photo of the vehicle, and it doesn't appear in Nate's surveillance footage that we know of, which captures Chris backing his own truck into the driveway in the early hours of the morning. Now let's look at a statement given by another family who also pass reference to an unusual vehicle in the area.
Anything unusual last couple days, even last couple weeks that you guys have noticed?
So we just had like the break-ins in the neighborhood, which
Right.
is Noah.
Yep.
We were gone the weekend before last. We were down in Gunnison. I haven't noticed anything weird. I mean, tonight we noticed something weird, which as a couple of you guys were sitting down here in this very truck. He like jumps on his beer can and then like leaves it there, goes down around the block, comes back, sit up and like kind of turns out here. We're like, what was that about?
In a gray truck?
Yeah, he got his license plate.
Did you call it in?
No.
Do you happen to have it still?
Yeah. But
I would love that.
And you're gonna come back for it, and the cops are sitting right there. That was weird.
Yes, welcome to our world.
Yeah.
Did you have a good look at the guy? Or?
Yeah.
He had like a backwards cap on,
Yeah.
like a hoodie.
Yeah, maybe.
Older, younger?
30s.
Okay. Did the truck say anything on it?
It was a gray truck with the camper shell.
It was a Ford.
It's a Ford.
Gray
Yeah.
Ford?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have the camper shell? What color was it?
It's camper shell.
It was
Tinted
same
windows?
color as his
Yeah,
car.
it was like gray tail.
Oh god.
Yeah, that was the only weird thing we saw tonight. We're like, what?
You were older.
It was quite like a normal Ford. It's not one of the newer ones. And then my neighbor across the street, she's got the cameras on her house.
Yep.
Many believe that this grey truck belonged to Nichol Kessinger, but here's what we do know directly from the official discovery documents. Nichol drove a white Toyota 4Runner. That vehicle is confirmed. It was documented and acknowledged in the investigation. There's no evidence, none, that Nichol ever owned a grey truck. There's no vehicle registration, no title, no insurance document, no parking or work record, nothing official that links her to a grey pickup. So, where did this myth come from? At some point, an image from Google Maps Street View began circulating online by a creator who at the time was pushing the Nichol Kessinger involvement theory. The image shows a grey truck parked by the curb on the street outside what is believed to be Nichol's mother's house. And that's it. That one photo, taken in 2015, I might add, was the foundation for the entire Nichol's family owns a grey truck theory. No one verified who the truck actually belonged to. There was no license plate, no registration traced, and in later Google imagery of the same area, the truck doesn't appear at all. It could have belonged to a neighbour, a visitor, a friend, or anyone else. There's simply no proof linking that truck to Nichol or her mother or her father. It wasn't actually even parked directly in front of Nichol's mother's house, but more over the next door neighbour's side. I can tell you now there's a blue car sitting outside my house in our parking spot that's been there for 4 days. It's not our car, I don't know whose it is, but it's in front of my house. So I hope to God Google Street View mappers haven't been passed while it's been out there and the owner goes on to commit a crime, because the car's in front of my house, so it's connected to me now, right? Anyway, from that one Street View image, a full-blown rumour was born. People saw a grey truck in the street and began stitching together unrelated ideas. Some content creators or theorists took the Google Street View image and claimed it proved the Kessingers had a grey truck. Others cited Betty's grey truck sighting and insisted this was the same vehicle because, well, it had to be, right? It's far too much of a coincidence that Betty mentions a grey truck. And there's one parked near Nichol's mother's home in a Google Maps Street View picture from 3 years before the murder. I'm just popping up here some image from Google Street View in relation to the address for Nichol's mother, and I'm just showing you on the bottom the previous mapping photos that were published on Google, and you can clearly see that that truck was from Street View mapping in 2015. For those of you that say I'm just plucking that out of thin air and making it up, I'm not. It's here. I've recorded the screen so you can see for yourself. There's no evidence that the grey truck outside Nichole's mother's house is the same one allegedly seen by Betty. In fact, Betty's own statement was vague. She said it was a smaller grey truck that she hadn't seen before, but that really doesn't tie it to Nichol in any way. But this rumour really took hold, even though no one's ever produced a vehicle registration in Nichole's name. No neighbour or co-worker have ever said they saw her driving a grey truck. Her known vehicle was white, a 4Runner, and the Street View image was 3 years old, taken before she was even involved with Chris Watts. Some claim that Nichol had hired the grey truck and taken it to her mother's house to clean it up and dispose of evidence before returning it. But there's no proof a grey truck was sitting by Nichole's mother's house right after the murders, because the only photo we've ever seen is this one from 3 years prior to the events that a slightly unscrupulous creator released as evidence. You know, it wouldn't be so bad if these channels said, I went digging and I found a grey truck parked next to Kessinger's mother's house from back in 2015. I wonder if that was her mother's or the neighbour's. I mean, it'd be a reach, regardless, because we don't know what type of truck was actually seen around Saratoga Trail. But for these people to actually put this out saying, this is Nichole's vehicle, or it could be a mum's or a dad's, but either way, it's parked at her mother's house. 100% proof that she was there the morning of the tragedy. We've got you, Nichol. Not being disrespectful, but that's just deceitful and shows no transparency of research at all. All it does is start a new conspiracy theory. And I apologise to those of you that know who this creator is and follow him off YouTube. He really can make some points that get you thinking. But this complete fabrication of evidence just isn't one of them. Why would a grey truck that nobody seems to know anything about be in the area of the Watts home around the day of the murders? Let's consider logistics. Some speculate that Nichol, or even her father, Dwayne, helped Chris dispose of the bodies using that grey truck. But that doesn't quite add up. Chris's own vehicle, his Anadarko issued truck, was GPS tracked and linked directly to the crime scene at Survey 319. That truck had blood and hair evidence. If a second person was present at Survey 319, they would have had to drive over open, flat terrain with no back roads and no cover. Chris was expecting his co-workers to turn up, but he was having trouble getting them to respond to his requests for their estimated time of arrival. I'm not convinced that either Nichol or her dad would have been stupid enough to head out to that site and risk being seen somewhere along the way. Why would someone else agree to drive their own vehicle into a crime scene on GPS-monitored land? It doesn't really make sense to me, not practically, not logistically, and not in light of the physical and forensic evidence. But to a lot of people, it is proof that Nichol was involved, directly, physically involved in the murders, and this truck sighting really hasn't helped. But I am just hoping to show you all, for those of you that saw the original release of this truck picture, there was no date showing that this was a map image taken in 2015. You can clearly see there that I'm faffing around with the dates at the bottom for the previous maps. And yes, this is 2015. It's not 2018. And therefore, it can't be linked to Nichol Kessinger's involvement in the murders as 100% evidence, as has been stated. Grey is actually one of the most common vehicle colours in the US. This wasn't a lime green Lamborghini, it was a generic truck in a suburban neighbourhood, and the only thing tying it to Nichol is rumour, not evidence. Now, I got so engrossed in this with truck colours that I ended up doing some research into what were the most popular truck colours in the US in 2018, so I will pop that on the screen also for those of you that care. Sometimes the hardest thing to accept in a case like this is that the truth could already be known, and Chris Watts acted alone. The grey truck theory is a great way to keep someone else involved in the story and to show that Chris had assistance, because he couldn't possibly have done it by himself. But I'm going to move on from this particular topic because, as I said, this theory started obviously after Betty had made her statement, and, you know, a creator finds this Google map image from 2015 and it's blown up. And I just want to highlight the misinformation that was given and that wasn't a recent picture of a truck in front of Nichole's mother's house. Now, there was a man named Ted Garipi. I could actually be completely butchering that surname, so I very much apologise to Ted or any other Garipis that may come across this if I am saying it incorrectly. But there was this man named Ted, and he says that he was once stabbed in the back, literally, by a teenage Nichol Kessinger. He claims he was once friends with the Kessinger family, witnessed disturbing behaviour and contacted police again when he recognised her name in the Chris Watts case. But how much of this story holds up? Can any of it be verified? And is there any reason to doubt it? Let's examine the claims and the facts. So we're going to start with the allegation. According to a comment posted online and attributed to Ted Garipi, he and his wife were once trusted friends of the Kessinger family. At some point, he claims the family asked them to check on their house while they were away and gave them one clear instruction: do not allow Nichole into the home. In this story, Nichole's sister is currently staying with the Garipis and they have headed over to Kessinger's house to pick up some more clothing and bits and bobs that they need. When they arrive to check on the house, they find a teenage Nichole inside engaged in an adult act with another person. An argument breaks out. It's a bit of a struggle between Ted and Nichole's man friend, and Nichole allegedly stabs Ted in the back during this confrontation. His wife allegedly slaps Nichole, hits Nichole, and the police were called to the scene. Nichole apparently called the police herself, but it doesn't appear to be given to us why Nichole would be calling the police, whether she was calling the police to make a complaint about Ted or whether she was calling the police to let them know that she'd just stabbed a man in the back. It's absolutely not clear. But Ted says that police basically decided not to continue with charges because Nichole was a juvenile and they'd basically told her that if she could behave herself, then there'd be no consequences to her actions. He also claims that after the Watts murders made the headlines, he and his wife contacted law enforcement again due to this earlier violent incident. It's a shocking story, but does it stand up to scrutiny? Let's read these messages that Ted posted. So we're going to start with the first one, which was posted to YouTube, I believe. And it says, "My wife and I were close family friends with her parents. Our children grew up with theirs. Nichole was always a problem child, and especially so when she was a teen. I just want to say that she stabbed me in the back with a kitchen knife and was arrested and charged with a felony. However, the judge deferred her felony conviction if she could stay out of trouble. This incident divided both families and we have not spoken since that last court appearance. This happened in 2004 or 2005, can't remember exactly what year, in Aurora, Colorado. Anyway, she entirely capable of being involved in the murders. She's a narcissist and violent." So following on from that, we do have some screenshots that have been made public here, and even though they've been made public, I am kind of blurring out any identifying information because this was a random citizen who contacted Ted and asked him if he could expand any further because they are part of a discussion group that is in the middle of dissecting the Watts case and Nichol Kessinger's involvement. So Ted's initial reply says, "Ha ha, that's okay to be sceptical. I mean, it happened years ago, and that incident may have nothing to do with what happened when Watts decided to annihilate his whole family. But I can assure you that she did indeed stab me with a kitchen knife pulled from the block on the counter, and the only reason I'm here is my wife beat the crap out of her after the first strike." He follows this up by another response to that person and says, "By the way, my wife did inform detectives about the incident because as soon as we were aware of her involvement, criminal or not, we wanted them to know about the stabbing as possibly because it happened when she was a juvenile, they might be aware of her adjudication. She basically had her felony assault lessened with a deferment agreement between her defence and the DA, which enraged my wife. Anyway, that was a long time ago, and I miss Barb's and Rob's company, and it was really my wife who severed the connection. I get when a parent does anything to save their child from harm. I'd have to say the fallout of that incident was more traumatic than the stabbing itself, because I lost good friends forever over a child's actions. And FYI, in that incident, it was Nichol who called the police before my wife did. What a mess. And then there's another publicly available post where Ted goes on to say, in response to a couple of people, I think this one is actually on Facebook, she was a juvenile, record sealed, felony charges deferred upon completion of conditions. Followed by, I've asked to watch Barb and Rob's home while they were away on vacation with instructions that Nichol under no circumstances was to be inside the home while they were away. My wife and Nichol's younger sister, who was staying with us, went by to get more clothing. My wife and her walked in on Nichol and a guy having oral fun on the couch in the family room. After doing her best to try and remove both, to no avail, she called me. Long story short, a physical altercation occurred between the male and myself, and which during that altercation she stabbed me in the back with a kitchen knife pulled from the butcher's block. My wife interceded, getting the knife away, and both fled, but were quickly arrested after my wife called 911. And that's it. That's all we have with regards to this incident. Now, there's been a bit of major name confusion with this. So a couple of people have tried to debunk this theory. But they've tried to debunk it because they've said that the biggest red flag in this story is the fact that Ted is referring to Nichol's father as Rob, but Nichol's father is called Dwayne, not Rob. And when you look Dwayne up, he's never been known by an alias as Rob, and that name isn't connected to him at all. And they've said that if Ted truly was a close friend of the family and had once been entrusted with access to their home, it's really hard to believe that he'd get such a basic detail wrong, and that this alone casts doubt on how well he actually knew them, or whether the story is accurate. Now, I do love it when people do try and debunk things that come up, because we should all be doing that and we should all be challenging our own thoughts. However, I need to debunk that particular debunk. So, yes, Nichol's father is called Dwayne. Nichol's mother is Barbara, so Barb. But at the time that Ted is referring to this story, Nichol's mother and father were separated. Dwayne and Barbara had separated when Nichol was young. And we hear her saying that herself in police interviews. She's saying that they separated when she was so little, it didn't really have any impact on her at all. But her cousins have had parents separate when they were at an older age, and it had caused them some emotional issues. So we can't say that this story isn't true because Ted is saying Rob and not Dwayne, and he's getting the name wrong, because the couple were separated. So there's no official record, no police report, no medical documentation, no court record showing that Ted Garipi was stabbed by Nichol Kessinger, or that she was involved in any violent juvenile incident. Now, while juvenile records are often sealed, a stabbing, especially one that required police involvement, would likely have left some kind of footprint somewhere, especially once she became a public figure. But nothing has surfaced. Not in the Watts case discovery files, not in media interviews, and not in official statements. Ted claims that felony charges were filed against Nichol, but later deferred once she completed certain conditions. And one would imagine that that would be a court-mandated programme. He says she was a juvenile and that the records were obviously sealed for this fact. So what does that actually mean in Colorado? And could it explain why no documentation exists? I've had to do a little bit of research here because obviously I'm in the UK and there are slight differences in our laws. Some are quite glaringly obvious and some are only minor. And there's also different loopholes in both countries. Let's have a little look then at what Colorado law allows when it comes to juvenile offenders and whether this story fits the pattern. So in Colorado, individuals under the age of 18 are usually processed through the juvenile justice system, and this system focuses more on rehabilitation than punishment. That is the same as the UK. That means even in cases involving violent crimes, including felony-level assaults like stabbing, the courts often aim to avoid long-term incarceration, offer counselling, supervision or treatment, and prevent the incident from following that person into adulthood if they comply with court orders. But that doesn't mean that serious crimes are overlooked. If the state chooses not to try a juvenile as an adult, it may still charge them with a juvenile felony offence, such as first-degree or second-degree assault, which stabbing would fall under. Ted claims that felony charges against Nichol were deferred upon completion of conditions, and in Colorado that would refer to a deferred adjudication or a deferred sentence. And here's how that works. A juvenile admits guilt or no contest to a charge or is found guilty, but instead of entering judgment or sentencing, the court postpones the final decision, and the juvenile is then placed under court supervision for a set period, maybe 6 to 12 months. During that time, they have to complete specific conditions like counselling, anger management, restitution to the victim, community service, staying out of further trouble. It's a bit like being on probation. If the juvenile successfully completes those conditions, the original charge can be dismissed, or adjudication may be withheld permanently. So technically, the person was charged, but it doesn't result in a criminal conviction on public record. Now to the heart of the issue, sealed records. In Colorado, most juvenile records are automatically sealed, especially if the charges were dismissed, the juvenile completed a diversion or deferred sentence, and there was no formal adjudication, i.e. they're not found guilty by the court. Even in cases where the offence is serious, the record is not typically accessible to the public, the media, or background checks, unless the person reoffends or the court explicitly orders the record remain open. So, if this stabbing story is true and Nichol was under 18, and if she was born in 1988, she'd be 16 or 17 at the time of the stabbing. If she accepted a deferred sentence, complied with all the conditions, and avoided further criminal activity, then there would be no public record of it today. Even the victim, Ted, would likely have had no access to any of her sealed juvenile records and could only really rely on his own memory of what police told him was happening at the time. So can this story be verified today? In short, no, not easily. Colorado law protects juvenile offenders from long-term damage caused by youthful mistakes, especially if they met court requirements and never offended again. And that means you won't find a police report in public databases. You won't find a court filing under Nichol's name. And no journalist or researcher will be able to use the Freedom of Information Act to get that information unless a judge unseals the record, which usually only happens in cases involving public safety or additional charges. This is by design, not cover-up. It's how the law works for everyone. So does this support or disprove the claim now that we know how juvenile offence records work, how sealing records works, and how felony charges can be deferred? Legally speaking, Ted Garipi's claim is plausible in structure. A violent juvenile offence could have occurred, charges could have been filed and deferred, and records could be sealed and unavailable. However, that doesn't confirm that it did happen. It only means that if it did, we wouldn't be able to prove it through standard legal or investigative means today. So we're still left with no other witness verification, no media coverage of the stabbing from the time, withholding the juvenile's name, of course, and minor inconsistencies in Ted's story that some say are more than minor because he couldn't remember the year that this happened. So while the legal pathway that he describes is definitely real, the lack of solid corroboration makes the story a bit hard to accept at face value. We've got no documentation, we've got no timeline, and we've got no second source. All we have is an unverified online comment and a real person who hasn't taken the claim beyond that. And that's the difference between a possibility and proof. In the comment attributed to Ted, he claims that he can't remember the year the stabbing happened. And some people do see that as quite odd, because being stabbed is a significant event. If the incident really happened and was serious enough to involve the police, it's quite difficult to imagine not remembering at least the year, because that kind of trauma tends to burn itself into people's memories. I mean, geez, I can remember when I had my wisdom teeth out, and that's not half as traumatic as being stabbed. Searches show that Ted Garipi is a real person. He's now around 63 years old, and he's lived in Colorado, including Aurora, not far from where Nichol Kessinger lived. But just because the person is real doesn't mean the story is. No one else has come forward to confirm it. The young man allegedly present in the house has never spoken publicly, and there's no supporting documentation or third-party verification, just a couple of online comments. And also, just because he shows up as a real person doesn't mean to say that he is the real person. So there could indeed be this man called Ted Garipi living in Colorado, whose information we can check out that says that he lived in Aurora and he's a steel fabricator or something like that. And he's about 63 years old. And we can see all that information, but that doesn't mean to say that that's the Ted Garipi that posted these messages. You know, somebody else could have used his profile picture. Somebody else could have opened a profile in his name. These things happen, and they happen a lot online. Of course, there's no proof of that either. More speculation. But let's be clear, if a man believed he was stabbed by somebody some years ago, and then that person was later connected to a triple murder and unlawful termination of a pregnancy investigation, you'd really be expecting him to come forward publicly, or at least provide something verifiable to law enforcement or the media. Instead, the only known version of this story exists as a comment in a YouTube or forum thread, and there's no indication or evidence that he ever took it further, publicly or legally. Now, that's not to say he didn't, because, as we've said, the discovery doesn't include everything. Yes, Nichol potentially stabbing somebody a few years ago may be seen as quite a big thing to investigators when they were looking into this case, but because the records were sealed, she was a juvenile, the decision could have been made to just keep all of that out of the discovery, because potentially wasn't material to the actual murders if the police had no other evidence linking her to them. And yes, people want the privacy. We've seen that from Nichol Kessinger. So just because this experience potentially happened to this man doesn't mean to say that he had to come forward. He didn't owe the media anything. But then it begs the question, why would he write about it online? And he wrote about it and then just disappeared. And that's the quite bizarre thing for a lot of people. If it was true, would it have any relevance to the murders of Shanann, Bella, Cece and Nico? And the answer is no, not directly. A troubled or rebellious past doesn't make somebody guilty of conspiracy or involvement in a murder. Nichol Kessinger was interviewed and police were looking into her phone records and all of that stuff, and she's never been charged, implicated or even named a suspect. The Chris Watts case is one of the most emotionally disturbing crimes in recent history, and it's left people searching for deeper explanations, because the idea that Chris acted alone so suddenly and so brutally feels unbearable. So people search for more, for deeper signs, for alternative suspects. But when stories like this one emerge, especially unverified ones, with no documentation to back them up, and with a person that just appears out the blue and then disappears just as quickly as they came in, it really is important to step back and ask, what is this story based on, and who does it really help to keep spreading it? In true crime, the line between truth and theory gets blurry really fast, and that's why it's more important than ever to hold each claim to the same standard: evidence, verification, and logic. Because rumours might feed curiosity, but they don't bring justice. What do you guys think of Ted Garipi and his online comments? And also, if I'm pronouncing Garipi incorrectly, please somebody correct me so I don't do it again in the future. Now, when Chris Watts left Colorado in July of 2018 and flew to North Carolina to be with Shanann and Bella and Celeste, it was supposed to be a turning point. According to Nichol Kessinger, she encouraged him to use that time to focus on his marriage. She told police in interviews that she had made it clear, you need to fix things with your wife. You need to spend time with your family. It sounded like the advice of a woman stepping away, someone respecting boundaries, maybe even somebody getting fed up of him and trying to push him back towards his wife. And even Chris himself backed her up. He admitted, she said, I needed to really try with Shanann and make this marriage work.
But we had went out and we stopped there just real quick on the way back. And we were there not very long. But that time I saw a picture of his wife and one of his kids. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, she's so beautiful. And I like took a step back and I was just like, this man has a gorgeous house. He has beautiful babies. He has a beautiful wife. He has an awesome job. Like, why would he want to leave this? And I remember talking to him about it. And that was the first time that I tried to actually say, what do you think about not separating from your wife? Like, what if you really try to work on this? And he had expressed to me that we've tried to work on this and it's not working. So that is why we're separating. And I spent some time, like, just, you know, kind of, because it almost made me feel bad, where I was, like, to the point where I'm engaging in a relationship with a man who, the way he described it, is in a contractual agreement, but was not in, like, an emotional relationship with somebody. And for me, the way I would have preferred to do this is to have waited till that contractual agreement was also done, and he was done, and he could have approached me and said, I'm just had a divorce, you know, maybe we could take this slow, what do you think? But instead it was, oh, we're separated and we're working on a divorce. And that is the part that I feel bad about, because I should have waited on that and I didn't. And, you know, I was just like, well, they're already there. So, you know, but then being in a house, I was just like, why? Fix this. Find a way to fix this. Make it work, you know? And I was like trying to push him to do it, and he seemed pretty reluctant to do it. He didn't want to. And, I don't know, we were still seeing each other fairly frequently, but I kind of like backed away so we weren't hanging out quite as much, and we were still close, but it was just, like, I really wanted him to try. Like, I wanted to know that he tried and it didn't work, and then he moved on, not that, you know, they both kind of tried and then he got himself into a situation with somebody else. And I don't know, I just thought he had a beautiful life going on, and he could have made it work. That was the way I looked at it from the outside.
So is this something you reflected on since this event, or was this you?
No, I was doing it then. Like,
you said this doesn't look right. He's kind of, I don't want to be responsible for breaking up a marriage, especially with 2 children. Is that kind of the gist I'm getting here?
I didn't think it didn't look right. I mean, I think he was legitimately sleeping in the basement, and I didn't think that these two were, I mean, I think it was like, hey, we're both stuck in this house for now. We got to sell this. In the meantime, you live here, I live here. We sleep in different rooms, take care of the kids. That's just like kind of how I took that. And no, I didn't think it didn't look right. I just thought it just seemed like he had so much going on, and it was just beautiful that I was like, why don't you just try this out, you know, and see if you can fix it. And he'd always be like, well, what about us? What about us? I'm like, don't worry about us. Like, that is more important. Like, try to see if you can, like, salvage whatever it is that you have going on with your wife. And you know, I always got the impression that he was a great father to his kids, like, always. And so, you know, I was like, and be the dad that you want to be. I was like, and see if you can make it work. And he just, like, we kind of talked about it off and on for, like, a few weeks. And I was just kind of like, I don't know. Like, I think I was kind of, like, cold feeting about it after I went over his house. And so this was, like, pretty early on. And then he told me that, he went to North Carolina. And he was like, I'm going to talk to her when I'm in North Carolina and see if I can get her to do this. To, like, try to, like, rekindle the flame.
Okay, so try to salvage his relationship as you've been asking him to do.
And then if he
When did he go to North Carolina?
I think it was, like, the last week of July, somewhere around there.
Okay.
So, I mean, this was like a couple weeks that I was just kind of like trying to push him to do that.
Let's pause at North Carolina.
But what happened next tells a very different story. Because the moment Chris landed in North Carolina, Nichole's tone changed. When he explained that he wouldn't be able to call or talk as much because he was around his family and wanted to focus on that, she didn't say, good. She didn't say, I understand. She didn't say, I'm glad you're doing this. Instead, she said, why? Are you with her? The insecurity was instant. And then came the nude pictures. Photos she sent Chris during his time with Shanann, while he was supposed to be working on his marriage, according to her own words. Chris, meanwhile, spent hours hiding away on his phone, texting Nichol, calling her, watching the videos that she sent, looking at the photos that she sent and transferring everything into his secret calculator app, and prioritising her, not the family he was meant to be reconciling with. So what happened here? Was Nichol genuine? Or was she calculating? If she really wanted Chris to fix things with his wife, why demand attention the moment he tried? If she really wanted him to try again, why send intimate photos? Why act jealous? We're left with several possibilities, none of them easy to prove, but all of them definitely worth considering. Number one, was it genuine at first and then jealousy kicked in later? Maybe she meant what she said, until she realised what it felt like to lose him for even a few days. And that's in two different scenarios. That's in the scenario of maybe she felt a pinch of guilt at what her and Chris were doing and how it was going to destroy this family. And maybe she told him, go and fix things with your wife, because she genuinely meant it and thought that he should. I don't think a lot of mistresses say that for those reasons, but of course I could be very wrong. I haven't been in that position myself. But if you want to be with somebody, you generally don't try and push them into the arms of another woman. It could also have been that she was potentially getting fed up with Chris, and it could be that she was getting sick of him, so she was kind of like, go and sort things out with your wife. God, just get away from me, just go back to her. I'm fed up, I want to move on. And then when he did go, she changed her mind and was like, oh no, but I miss this about him, I miss that about him, we'll never be able to do this again. Oh gosh, now he's with her, what are they doing? It could have been either of those reasons. So it could have been genuine initially, and then the jealousy kicks in again later. Or was it a test? Was it a way to see if he'd actually leave his wife on his own? Telling him to fix things might have been a way to gauge his loyalty to her, not to Shanann. Or was it a threat in disguise? A subtle push? A try to fix it that really meant, you better make a choice, buddy, and you better make it fast. Now, sometimes people say the right thing publicly, but behind the scenes, their actions speak volumes. Nichol may have wanted to be perceived as the one who didn't interfere, but the emotional grip she had on Chris was tightening, not loosening. He became more distracted, more distant from Shanann, more obsessed with keeping Nichol happy. And by the end of that trip, Chris wasn't rebuilding his marriage. He was mentally checked out. And many believe that Nichol was the one holding the steering wheel. Was Nichol Kessinger sincere when she told Chris to spend time with his family? Or did she not mean Shanann and the girls? Did she mean spend time with his family as in Cindy and Ronnie and Jamie and her children? Did she say, go fix your marriage and spend time with your family, and mean the go fix your marriage part as go and sort all this divorce stuff out now and enjoy seeing your mum and dad and your sister and brother-in-law and your nephew? Or did she say what she had to say while secretly manipulating him in a more subtle way? What do you think? We may never get her full truth, but this moment, this contradiction, is one of the earliest signs that something really complicated was already unfolding in this story. And Nichol became deeply involved in every aspect of Chris's life really quickly. She was setting up fitness apps for Chris, carefully advising him on his macronutrients, essentially telling him what to eat and how to stay fit. This wasn't casual advice, it was control dressed up as care, because as we know from her interviews, this was something that she was very interested in and very concerned about, and she just went on and on and on at Chris about it, if we believe what she says her conversations with him were about. But she also wasn't just concerned about his workouts. She was looking at apartments for him. She was deciding what kind of living situation would suit their future together. She was discussing where Shanann would live after a possible separation, what Chris's visitation plans for the girls might look like, and even how many bedrooms he'd need to accommodate
Yeah,
everyone.
I mean, like, and if you go, like, maybe, like, a week further back, like, there's times, like, I was trying to help him find an apartment, like, just for him, not for me, but for him and his kids, to get set up, and, like, there's times where I'm like, well, where's your wife moving to? Like, how close is she gonna be to you? You should be within like 30 minutes of your kids, so they're close, and like you want to be close to their school and close to your gym, and like what's your price range? Like, I was helping him get all of this stuff set up, and it was like in a very decent manner. And he got back and I started asking him, like, what are you gonna do? Because the Colorado housing market is fire, and you guys are gonna sell this house like real fast. And I'm like, you need to start looking for a new place to live. And I'm like, where do you want to live? And I was really trying to help him out. I'm like, do you want to get a house? Do you want 3 bedrooms so you have one and each of your girls have one? I'm like, do you want to, you know, like do an apartment? Like, what do you want? You know, where do you want to live? Because he's in Frederick, but that whole area over there is just like a bunch of small towns, and you can kind of just pick and choose. Everything's kind of, you know, and so he told me, well, I like Brighton, and I was like, okay. And then he told me he wanted a 2-bedroom apartment, and he said he wanted 1 room for him and the other room for his 2 girls. And I thought it was kind of cute. Like, I remember telling him, I was like, yeah, me and my sister had bunk beds, like, at my dad's house. And I was like, when we were little girls, and me and my sister were the same age apart as him and as his 2 daughters, you know. So I told him, I was like, they're going to love it. I was like, they might be, like, stuck in one room together. I was like, but they'll become, like, best buddies. And it was really exciting. Like, I liked helping him, and I just wanted him to, like, I don't know. This is what he told me he wanted. So I was like, well, I will help you do the research. But another thing that I really took care of was to be like, where is she moving to? I was never like, you know what, screw your wife, try to get full custody. None of that bullshit. It was always just like, you know, I'd ask him, I'm like, well, what kind of custody are you guys going to have? Because he at work, they're about to switch his schedule. So right now he's like a Monday through Friday, and they're about to switch these guys to 8 days on, 6 days off.
That's tough.
That's awesome. And I was asking him, I was like, are you going to have your kids like on that set of days off? I was like, because that would work perfect. Like 1 week on, 1 week off. And I was just like, you know, we just talk about it. I'm like, what is your plan? And he's like, we haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do about the kids yet. But he told me, he's like, Colorado's a 50-50 state, and she's okay with everything 50-50. Like, he said that she was, like, on board with this because she wanted it too. Like, she was checked out of this relationship.
Nichol was involved in planning the logistics of his family's breakup before it even happened. And she told the investigators that she didn't want gifts or expensive things, and yet Chris paid for almost everything. We've heard them say he paid for gas, he paid for restaurant meals, and when his Anadarko gift card ran out, he used his own bank card to cover expenses like dinners at the Lazy Dog restaurant. He later said he wished he'd just asked Nichol to pay. I mean, here, we're really talking about control, dependence, and hypocrisy, and it raises a crucial question. How much control did Nichol really have over Chris? Chris handed over control and allowed her to dictate his life in a way he claimed he hated from Shanann. Unbelievable. But this is a pattern seen often in toxic relationships. People push against one form of control or perceived control, like Chris did with Shanann, but then seek out or accept another, sometimes more subtle or manipulative control, like Nichol's. Let's move on to what is often referred to as the dark stuff surrounding Nichol Kessinger, because there are a lot of theories regarding this, and it's important to include them in this series. Now, there's so much speculation about Nichol Kessinger. It's hard to fit it all in my videos, but among the more unusual allegations is that she may have had some kind of link to the occult organisation known as the Ordo Templi Orientis, or the O.T.O. So what is the O.T.O, and is there any truth to these claims? This has been covered before by other content creators, and I've noticed that some of them keep the dark stuff really dark without going into too much detail about what things really are and how they work. So they kind of cherry pick the more shocking aspects in these areas. I know a lot of you have asked me to cover this in great detail, and I will just start with saying that I personally don't believe in this theory at all for a number of reasons. However, I always do keep an open mind, and when I do form an opinion, I try to find things that are backed by evidence that discredit my own thoughts. And I do this on purpose to make sure that I'm really looking at both sides. And I can't do that if I don't challenge my beliefs, right? In this case, I don't particularly have any beliefs. I'm not a religious person and I don't follow any religion. I'm not anti-religion by any means. It's just not for me personally. I do think there are things in the world that we don't understand, and all this dark stuff with Nichol Kessinger is something that I've personally struggled to wrap my head around. So I've looked for as many videos and accounts of things as possible to start building a research framework. I already know a fair bit about certain people who have been brought up in relation to the dark stuff, like Aleister Crowley. He's from my home country, so his story is something that I'm already familiar with. The rest I've really needed to dive deep into, and for those that have asked for this particular aspect of the case, the dark things, you might be disappointed to hear that I still don't buy into the theories at all. But please don't let that put you off, because again, I'm going to look at things both ways, and my opinion is irrelevant. It is still for you to make your own minds up, as always. So in September and October 2018, Nichol Kessinger disappears from the public eye, and speculation around her behaviour and motivations really begin. Some early Reddit and YouTube users begin speculating about her cold demeanour in the Discovery interview documents. Then, in late 2018 to early 2019, conspiracy theories really begin gaining traction, particularly on forums like Reddit, YouTube, and Facebook true crime groups. People begin at this point dissecting her Google searches, her emails and phone records, and theories about her involvement in witchcraft, Luciferianism, or the O.T.O start to appear, though no evidence ever surfaced alongside these theories. From 2019 onwards, YouTubers and bloggers with occult or conspiracy-focused audiences begin connecting dots between the occult, numerology, and the Watts case. Claims about the O.T.O membership specifically start being mentioned in YouTube videos and fringe blog posts, sometimes based on supposed leaked documents or vague social media connections. So what even is the O.T.O? The Ordo Templi Orientis is a real-world secretive spiritual group with roots in early 20th century Europe. It does copy some practices and values that are tied to Freemasonry, but it's most famously associated with Aleister Crowley, the English occultist and writer, who coined the phrase, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." The O.T.O mixes elements of ceremonial magic, mysticism, and esoteric philosophy. It's been described both as a spiritual path and, by its critics, a cult. In the US, it had a chapter in Colorado where Nichol Kessinger lived and worked. Now, some people who've covered this aspect of the case, as I said, have only looked at the things that kind of provide shock value or make things seem very dark, as people like to put it. And I've spent a lot of time the past week really digging into all of these different supposed dark things and really trying to figure out if they are what they are being promoted as. Now, the Ordo Templi Orientis sounds mysterious, maybe even a bit dangerous. but is it really? So it is an occult organisation that was founded in the early 1900s, and its name means Order of the Eastern Temple. And as I said, it originally took inspiration from Freemasonry. But under the influence of British occultist Aleister Crowley, the group evolved into something far more controversial. Crowley built the O.T.O around his spiritual philosophy called Thelema, which centres on one powerful idea: do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. To followers, that means discovering and living your true purpose, your true will. To critics, it means something else entirely. So let's start breaking this down. Who was Aleister Crowley? So Edward Alexander Crowley was born in 1875 in England, and he died in 1947. He was also known as the Beast 666 and the wickedest man in the world. Occupation-wise, he was an occultist. He was a poet. He was a writer. He was a mountain climber. He was a philosopher and a ceremonial magician. He claimed this philosophy, Thelema, came to him through a spiritual entity named Iwas while he was in Egypt in 1904. And that experience reportedly led to the writing of the Book of the Law, which is the central text of Thelema. He travelled extensively, and he was actually even part of an expedition to climb the mountain K2, which at that time had never been attempted before. So this was a man of many talents and a person who was incredibly inquisitive. But why was he so controversial? Well, Crowley openly practiced ritual magic, and that's magic with a K. The distinction between magic as we know it, MAGIC, and magic with a K is that magic without the K is typically used to refer to stage magicians or illusionists, people who put on a performance and shows for the public. It's the pulling the rabbit out of a hat or sawing the lady in half type magic. Whereas magic with a K often includes invoking spirits, astrology, tarot, sex magic, and other esoteric rites. This absolutely terrified conservative Victorian society in England and elsewhere, as you can imagine. Crowley used Christian imagery in irreverent or often blasphemous ways, which fueled outrage, especially in predominantly Christian countries like England. He was also a heavy user of opium, cocaine, hashish, ether, and later heroin. He also experimented with substances as tools for spiritual exploration and consciousness expansion, decades before psychedelics became associated with counterculture. Crowley was also openly bisexual, and he engaged in sex magic rituals which often involved multiple partners, same-sex encounters, and spiritual symbolism. And in a time when homosexuality was still criminalised in Britain, this made him a target of scorn and utter moral panic. Crowley really leaned into his villain image. He called himself the Great Beast 666, not because he worshipped the devil, but to mock religious conservatives. He wrote explicitly about taboo topics. He enjoyed scandal, and he pushed social boundaries deliberately. Lots of people still behave in this way today. People can be purposely provocative to get people to think outside the box. Russell Brand, the comedian turned wellness or spiritual figure or guru or whatever he's calling himself these days, he shows some Crowley-esque traits. He publicly renounced fame to embrace yoga, addiction recovery, and spiritual awakening, while still being highly polarizing and provocative. He challenges religious dogma and societal norms, though his tone is much more hippie than occultist, but he is accused of having a cult-like influence. Then there's Damien Eccles. one of the West Memphis Three. If you know about that crime, the child murders of Robin Hood Woods, he was accused of murder due to the fact that really he wore a trench coat and listened to Metallica and other music that was considered to be satanic or a bad influence in his area at the time. And he was embroiled in this horrendous miscarriage of justice, sentenced to death row, and then was subsequently released after having to agree to an Alford plea. He, back then and now, embraces magic, ritual and esoteric practices, and he actually claims that magic helped him survive death row. He's not as provocative as the likes of Crowley, but he openly identifies with Crowleyan ceremonial magic, and he has helped demystify it in modern discourse. And then we have the likes of Marilyn Manson in his early era, a musician and cultural provocateur. He deliberately used satanic and occult imagery to challenge Christian America and provoke mainstream panic. He was a walking scandal in the 90s and 2000s, preaching individuality, moral relativism, and anti-religion themes, much like Crowley did with Thelema. So what Crowley was doing with his public persona, leaning into this villain image, giving himself an identity, the great beast 666, being a bit taboo and enjoying scandal and pushing all of those social boundaries deliberately. He's not the only one that's done it. Plenty people continue to do this. Now, although Crowley was not a Satanist, people often confuse his brand of ceremonial magic with devil worship. Crowley himself didn't believe in Satan in the Christian sense, and you can see that in his writings if you do actually want to look into them. And if we want to go with this theory of Nichol being involved in these kind of occult things, it probably makes sense for you to actually look into those practices. Thelema especially, it's no good for us just to say, oh, this was clearly satanic because Aleister Crowley, without knowing who Aleister Crowley actually was and what he actually stood for. And don't just listen to one or two YouTube videos that say that he was this satanic being. He didn't believe in Satan in the Christian sense, but his rejection of Christianity and his embracing of esoteric rituals made him a lightning rod for accusations. And to be fair, he often gets confused with the well-known Satanist Anton LaVey. They're two completely different people, and they believed in and practiced two entirely different things. Now, officially, Aleister Crowley was never convicted of any kind of crime, although he did push every legal and moral boundary of his time. However, he was definitely accused of moral corruption, promoting sexual perversion, occult influence on vulnerable followers, and his substance misuse would be considered criminal today, but it wasn't always illegal during his lifetime, and we do need to remember that. Crowley founded the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily in 1920 as a spiritual retreat. Part temple, part school, part magical lab, if you will, and practices there included daily rituals and invocations, magical training and initiations, yoga, meditation, astrology, sex magic ceremonies, and psychedelic or mind-altering rituals, including the use of hashish, opium, and possibly mescaline. Crowley lived there with several followers, including mistresses and fellow magicians. So the Abbey of Thelema itself was a quite modest house, but Crowley transformed it into a mystical space. They covered the walls in murals and magical symbols, images of Egyptian gods, sexual scenes relating to substances, and Thelemic sigils. He called it the Temple of the Abbey, and the visuals were designed to trigger spiritual awakening through shock, mystery, and symbolism. Many of the murals were intended to confront the unconscious, a bit similar to how Carl Jung used symbols to explore the psyche. But things took a bit of a dark turn at the Abbey of Thelema, And in early 1923, a young Englishman named Raoul Loveday, I know some of you are going to say it's Raoul, it's Raoul. I'm Northern British, it's Raoul. Raoul Loveday joined the Abbey with his wife Betty May. Now, Loveday became seriously ill and he actually died at the Abbey, and he died of malaria and enteritis, reportedly after drinking from a contaminated spring, which Crowley had told him not to do. Betty May returned to London and she gave an interview to the press claiming that Crowley made her husband drink cat blood in a ritual and exposed them to really disturbing practices. There is no proof that Crowley was directly responsible for Loveday's death, and the scandal drew international attention, and it of course painted the Abbey as the site of black magic and depravity. After the press picked up this particular story, Benito Mussolini's fascist government took notice. Crowley was then seen as a corrupting foreign influence, and in 1923 the Italian government expelled him from the country and the Abbey of Thelema was officially closed. Crowley left and the property fell into decay. To this day the building still stands, abandoned, covered in graffiti and vandalism, but some of Crowley's original murals are still faintly visible. Now that phrase, "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," it sounds really rebellious, right? Like a license to just go and do whatever you want and to heck with the consequences. That's not what it means at all. It doesn't mean go off and do what you want. And people misrepresent it so much in the Watts case without actually exploring the Thelemic philosophy. We do have a lot of YouTube channels misrepresenting it and totally not exploring the philosophy behind Thelema. It's so easy to take just one motto and charge off with it, but that gets us nowhere at all because you have to know what it really actually means. And there's one more line that people conveniently forget in their videos when covering this theory. They always say, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," and that's it. But the exact whole phrase is, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will." Meaning, your true will, your path in life, your true purpose must operate in harmony with others. It's not about dominance. It's about direction, led by love, not selfishness. So no, do what thou wilt does not mean do what you want, to heck with it all, just do it, including murder. It means do what you're here to do and do it with everything you've got. Now, Crowley's influence is massive in modern esotericism, Wicca, chaos magic, and pop culture. He wasn't a dangerous occultist as many Watts case conspiracy theorists would have you believe. He's more of a proto-countercultural figure who defied repression in reality. So when people ooh and ah about the O.T.O and the Crowley satanic and dark magic influence, it's mainly nonsense. And a guarantee that they researched who Aleister Crowley really was and what his belief system meant after the media kicked up a fuss and turned him into the spawn of Satan and didn't do any deeper digging into the actual philosophy behind the man. Back to the O.T.O anyway, they offer a series of initiations and each one involves symbolic rituals, mystical teachings and esoteric knowledge. Some members meditate or do yoga, practice ceremonial magic, or take part in sacred rituals like the Gnostic Mass. A few advanced members even explore some forms of sex magic, and that is a real thing. Yes, the O.T.O actually do this. And it's something that sparked plenty of debate and media sensationalism. So, is the O.T.O a dark cult then? Because, sex magic? No, not exactly. It's not a mass movement. It doesn't isolate members from the families, and it doesn't preach hate, violence, or illegal acts. It's even legally recognised as a religious or spiritual group in several countries. But it is secretive, and its use of symbols, ritual magic, and Crowley's edgy reputation, including calling himself the Beast 666, which didn't help matters with people's false opinions of him, has led many to label it dangerous or evil. But in truth, the O.T.O seems to exist in a grey area. Not mainstream, not criminal, but definitely unconventional. And that's what people don't like. That's not everybody. I'm aware I've just made a huge sweeping statement there, but a lot of people do not like unconventional things. Joining the O.T.O isn't easy. I've had a little look into this. You have to apply, go through an initiation, and then work your way through the degrees. It's not something that you just stumble into, and it's not something that most people would actually choose lightly looking at it. Now, inside the O.T.O, members move through different degrees, and degrees are kind of like levels in a game, but instead of points, they gain knowledge, ritual experience, and deeper access to the group's teachings. So, as I said, I've been researching this all week. Let's break it down. So, the first group is the Man of Earth degrees, and these are the entry level stages for beginners. So, at 0 degrees, you have the Minerval stage, which is a trial run. So you basically get introduced to the group and decide whether these kind of people and these kind of teachings are definitely for you, and if this is something that's going to be sustainable for you to practice in your life. Degrees 1 to 4 explore personal responsibility, self-control, and your place in the world. And then there is something known as the PI, which is the perfect initiate. And that is the end of the beginner's journey. And you're kind of prepared at that point for more serious work. So think of this stage as the foundation. It's about learning the rules, the symbols, and the rituals. The second group is the Lovers degrees. Now, things go a bit deeper here. This is where members start studying magic, alchemy, and mystical teachings. So degrees numbers 5 to 7 involve more advanced rituals and a deeper study of Crowley's work, especially the Book of the Law. And it's also where sexual symbolism and spiritual duality starts to play a bit of a role. The final group is the Hermit degrees, and these are the highest levels, and they are very secretive. Degrees 8 and 9 involve teachings about thelemic sex magic and inner transformation. Now, reportedly, very few people reach this level, and what's taught is kept private, even within the group. Beyond that, degree 10 is a leadership role, kind of like running the O.T.O in a country. And then degrees 11 and 12 are super rare, seemingly, and very mysterious. They seem to be mostly symbolic or like the global leader of the O.T.O. So let's talk about one of the most misunderstood topics in occult circles, and that is sex magic. It sounds really provocative, right? But at its core, sex magic isn't about shock or scandal. It's a spiritual and energetic practice that uses sexual energy as a tool for transformation, focus, and manifestation. Aleister Crowley believed that the most intense human experiences, especially sex, were gateways to higher consciousness. He wrote secret rituals where sex was used as a symbol of union between opposites, so masculine and feminine, body and spirit. He wrote rituals where the sex was used as a way to break through limits like shame or fear. So, for example, people who were confused about their sexual identity, engaging in intimacy with people of the same sex as them, and trying to strip them of the shame or the fear they might feel around that. Some of these rituals are still used today in the higher degrees of the O.T.O, but they are kept private and they are only taught to initiates. Important note here, this isn't about exploitation or wild orgies or whatever images you have in your head of sex magic. Real sex magic I have been researching is 100% consent based, it's ritualized, and it is treated with reverence, not casualness. So it's almost closer to Tantra than it is to anything that you'd see in the tabloids, in movies, or on gossip sites. So when you hear claims about dark magic, cults, or secret rituals, remember, some of it is based on real obscure spiritual practices, but a lot of it is fueled by fear, mystery, and the human love for conspiracy. Now, here's where things get strange. Online sleuths, particularly on Reddit and YouTube, began to circulate posts claiming that Nichol Kessinger was listed as a member or attendee of an O.T.O lodge or meetup group in the Denver area. Some point to a name similar to hers. We've seen Nichol K or Nicole K spelt differently appearing on event rosters, while others reference archived websites or now deleted meetup pages that showed someone by that name attending thelemic rituals or Gnostic masses. But here's the massive problem. There's never been any definitive, verifiable proof. There's no membership list published by the O.T.O, and the group, being secretive by nature, wouldn't confirm or deny private members anyway. Still, some claim the timing and the location line up. Nichol was living in an area near several known O.T.O meetup spots, allegedly. Now, the name Robert is often brought up in fringe discussions of the Watts case also, especially in conspiracy theory circles on YouTube and Reddit. The claims usually suggest that this Robert was Nichol Kessinger's spiritual advisor and that he was a member of the O.T.O himself. But let's break down what's actually known and what's speculation or unverified. So who is Robert Idsardi? There's no verifiable public record confirming the exact identity of a man named Robert Idsardi in connection with Nichol Kessinger, the Watts case, or the O.T.O. There is a man by this name who exists and has a profile on Facebook and is listed in address directories and things. Obviously, people have gone through Nichol Kessinger's phone records with a fine-tooth comb and have Googled the heck out of all the numbers on there to try and find who she was talking to. And obviously, this poor man, Robert, has come up. Now, it is important to remember that just because Nichol spoke to this person, it doesn't mean to say that he 100% is the spiritual advisor or that he has anything to do with the O.T.O at all. His name only appears in online discussions and YouTube videos and not in any official discovery documents or law enforcement files released publicly in the Watts case. It is likely that he's been misidentified, or he could have possibly been someone who had a minor or unrelated interaction with Kessinger, and that's been misrepresented online. The idea that Robert was in the Ordo Templi Orientis comes from the YouTube conspiracy videos that draw on these vague or misattributed associations. People claiming to have found his name on O.T.O member lists, which have never been substantiated or cited with any real evidence. Attempts to fit a broader narrative that Nichol was involved in dark occultism, and the spiritual advisor label being misused, because some people assume that any advisor in spirituality must be connected to esoteric or occult organizations like the O.T.O, especially if they're male and not publicly known. I mean, everyone now refers to this spiritual advisor that we're calling Robert as the old man sex advisor. Poor guy, we don't know who he is. There's just no credible source, document or membership log tying Robert to the O.T.O, and we don't know with 100% certainty. As said, the O.T.O doesn't release membership lists, and its associations are often misused in internet conspiracies due to its secretive nature and symbolic language. While there is a good bit of discovery that is redacted, it is possible that this particular Robert was spoken to by police, but if he had nothing to say that was material to the case, as we've already discussed, it likely wouldn't have been included in the discovery to protect a private citizen's privacy. We have zero evidence of who he is or what his link was to Nichol Kessinger, meaning that all the rumours about Robert and all the rumours about the O.T.O are just that, rumours. The rumours persist largely in online circles, often as part of a broader attempt to paint her as sinister or hiding something. And that raises a serious question. Are people simply reaching for meaning in a case that already feels too twisted to be real? Or is there something more beneath the surface? Let's talk about one of the more unusual rumours surrounding the Watts case, and that is the idea that Nichol Kessinger was a witch, or at the very least, that she used witchcraft or spiritual rituals to influence Chris. Now, this isn't a new claim by any stretch of the imagination. It's been around since 2018, but lately, more and more people are revisiting it. So where did it come from? And is there any real evidence? Firstly, let's have a little look at what sparked this idea. Some people claim that Nichol owned or used crystals and spoke about energy work. I personally haven't seen her speaking to anybody in interviews or any of the text messages that we've seen about energy work, but that's what some people say. She was into astrology and spiritual healing, and she allegedly gave Chris special drinks that only he drank. Not her, just him. These details have led some to believe that she was doing more than just dating Chris. She was casting spells, doing ritual work, and somehow trying to control him spiritually. Is that witchcraft? In modern terms, witchcraft can actually mean a lot of things. Using crystals and cleansing energy, that's actually really common in New Age spirituality. It's not necessarily occult or sinister. Giving someone special teas or herbal blends could be holistic, it could be personal preference, or it could raise eyebrows if done in secret. Practicing manifestation, astrology, tarot, or intention setting. Many people do that today and consider it spiritual, not dark. But when you add this into a high-profile, deeply emotional crime like the Watts case, people start to connect dots that may or may not be there. One of the more specific claims is that Nichol made Chris drink something that no one else did, and some say that these were meant to control or influence him. So let's explore two substances that people speculate might be involved: devil's breath and ayahuasca tea. Devil's breath is the street name for scopolamine, which is a drug made from plants in the nightshade family. It's notorious for causing extreme suggestibility, basically making people highly compliant and open to suggestion. This particular substance has a dark reputation because of reports that it's been used by criminals to drug victims, rob them, or worse, by making them unable to resist or remember what happened. Devil's breath can be dissolved into drinks or food because it's actually odourless, tasteless, and colourless when it's properly prepared. And this makes it a scary choice for criminals looking to drug someone without their knowledge. However, it's very potent and the dosage has to be carefully controlled. Too much can cause unconsciousness or even death. If someone unknowingly drinks scopolamine, they might experience sudden drowsiness or passing out, confusion and disorientation, loss of free will or resistance, becoming very suggestible, memory loss about events that happen while under its influence, difficulty speaking or moving, and a dry mouth and blurred vision. And victims often describe feeling like a robot or completely controlled. Devil's breath is not a spiritual or occult tool, and it's not used in spiritual practices. It is a dangerous substance, abused mostly for criminal purposes. In contrast, most occult or spiritual traditions emphasize consent, awareness, and respect. So secretly drugging someone or giving them something that makes them have no memory of events goes against these ethics. There's no evidence whatsoever that Nichol gave Chris any devil's breath. The idea likely does just come from rumours and the drug's scary reputation in pop culture. Plus, scopolamine effects are dramatic and fast, and Chris's behaviour doesn't clearly match poisoning symptoms. Devil's breath causes impaired cognition and physical weakness, not clear, rational decision-making. It doesn't cause people to plan and carry out complex crimes in any kind of coherent way. And while we can say that Chris didn't carry out this crime in a coherent way at all, he was certainly aware of his actions and what he was doing. It does look like Chris Watts could have planned his crimes over time, showing forethought and awareness. There's absolutely no sign that he was unconscious, disoriented, or physically impaired in the way devil's breath poisoning would cause. His actions were deliberate, and the evidence shows he took steps to cover up what he did. While devil's breath might make someone highly suggestible or compliant, it doesn't cause the kind of long-term planning or complex behaviour seen in this case. So the theory that Nichol Kessinger made Chris murder his family by drugging him with devil's breath doesn't quite match the facts. So what is ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is made by brewing 2 plants from the Amazon rainforest. It contains DMT, which is a strong psychedelic, and that causes vivid visions and deep spiritual experiences. For centuries, indigenous shamans have used ayahuasca in ceremonies to heal, gain insight, and connect with spirit. The effects of ayahuasca can vary, but the most popular effects are intense hallucinations and visions, deep emotional purging or release, feelings of spiritual connection and insight, and people often describe as being on a journey to one's inner self or spirit world. People who drink ayahuasca usually do it in a ritual setting with guidance, as the experience can be physically and emotionally intense. Now, it is possible that if Nichol was exploring spiritual or alternative healing plans, she might have believed that giving Chris ayahuasca could help him to open up emotionally or break down barriers. This does fit with some people's interest in using spiritual practices to build intimacy or transformation in relationships. But would she secretly give it to him without him knowing exactly what it was? Ayahuasca is not something that you can usually just casually slip into a drink. It's really bitter, it has strong physical effects like nausea, and it requires mental preparation. Most people who use ayahuasca do so willingly and, as I said, often as part of a ceremony or retreat. And giving it secretly would be really dangerous and unpredictable. Ayahuasca is a powerful psychedelic brew, and while many people use it for spiritual growth, it is important to understand that it can make you feel very, very sick, at least temporarily. Common physical effects of ayahuasca include nausea and vomiting, which is often called the purge. It can cause diarrhea, which is seen as another form of physical release, dizziness and weakness, increased heart rate and swelling, and sometimes shaking or trembling. Psychologically, it can cause intense emotional release, which can feel overwhelming or even really frightening. It can cause vivid hallucinations and visions and feelings of anxiety or panic during the trip. But could either of these really be the special drinks? The devil's breath seems highly unlikely in a domestic relationship given its notoriety and danger. There's no reports of Chris having any symptoms matching scopolamine poisoning. And as for the ayahuasca, well, that's possible if Nichol was into spiritual or alternative healing, but still highly unlikely that she would secretly give this without Chris's knowledge. It's intense, and he would feel quite ill drinking it. There are other possibilities. The special drinks could have been herbal teas, energy tonics, or other natural remedies. They're all common in New Age spirituality and energy healing. Or it could simply have been a rumour blown out of all proportion with no real substance behind it at all. Moving on, crystals have become incredibly popular in recent years, especially in New Age and spiritual communities. You might have heard people say that they use crystals for healing, energy balancing, or protection. There's crystals to help attract money, crystals to help with headaches and migraines, crystals to help with anxiety. I have crystals. I don't know what they're used for. I'm not spiritual. I don't do anything with my crystals. They just sit there in a bowl, looking pretty. People who own crystals don't necessarily have to have a tie of some kind to witchcraft. People who own crystals don't have to do anything with them at all, other than appreciate the fact that they look nice. Can we say Nichol was a witch and set in bad intentions because she had crystals? At the end of the day, she was a geologist. A lot of geologists probably really like rocks. So many believe that crystals hold energy vibrations or frequencies that interact with the human body's own energy field, sometimes called the aura or chakras. The idea is that crystals can balance, clear, or amplify energy in specific ways to promote emotional, mental, or physical healing. People often use crystals during meditation, and they place them on the body or they hold them to focus the mind and intention on healing or positive change. Now, a big part of crystal healing comes down to intention. When someone focuses their thoughts and positive energy through a crystal, it can create a placebo effect, meaning that the person feels better because they believe the crystal is helping them. That doesn't mean it's all in the head in a bad way. The mind and body are connected, so positive beliefs can genuinely impact well-being, hence a connection to a specific crystal making people feel better in specific ways. Some people report feeling uneasy, anxious, or drained when holding or being near certain crystals. And this can happen if the crystal has absorbed negative energy from previous users or environments. Crystals are believed by many to store energy, both good and bad. In some magical traditions, crystals can be used as tools for setting a bad or wicked intention into a crystal, like wishing harm or misfortune on someone. That crystal can then be placed near the person, hidden in their space, or used in rituals meant to influence them negatively. Many spiritual practitioners strongly warn against using crystals or magic to harm others, as it can backfire or harm the person casting the curse. The idea of karma or energetic balance means negative energy sent out can return to the sender. There was a couple of crystals found in the Watts home, specifically placed under Bella and Cece's beds. Some speculate that Nichol had placed these crystals there during visits to the home and that these crystals were negative energy tools. It is possible Nichol used crystals as part of her spiritual or energy practices, maybe to help Chris emotionally or spiritually. But whether she intended to control or manipulate him with them is unknown, and there's no concrete evidence of curses or dark magic. Interestingly, Shanann also had crystals, and after her death, a friend said Shanann's mother, Sandy, gave her some of the crystals to keep. This shows that crystals were part of both women's lives and possibly reflects their interest in spiritual or emotional well-being. In Shanann's case, it could also be simply like me, she found them really nice to look at. And without evidence, claims about curses or hexes or manipulation remain speculation. The Watts case is tragic and complex, and sometimes people look for symbolic reasons to explain things that are ultimately about human choices and actions. What's your take? Do you think crystals played a role here? Or is it just another theory trying to make sense of a difficult story? There's been a lot of speculation about Nichol Kessinger's spiritual beliefs and whether she may have been involved in Wicca, nature-based spirituality, or even Gaia worship. Before we dive into Nichol, let's just quickly understand the belief systems. Wicca is a modern pagan religion centered around nature, the seasons, and a balance between masculine and feminine energies. Wiccans might cast spells, they celebrate moon phases, and they honour deities like the goddess and the horned god. But importantly, Wicca is not satanic, it's peaceful, and it's spiritual for most followers. Gaia refers to the ancient Greek goddess who symbolises the earth. In modern spirituality, Gaia worship or Gaia theory views the earth as a living, interconnected organism. Mother Earth, if you will. Followers can connect with nature through rituals, energy work, or environmental practices. Online theorists have pointed to a few things: the crystals, natural beliefs, saying that Nichol reportedly had an interest in natural healing, that she used special drinks, and that Chris's behavioural shifts are down to energy work or spiritual influence. And this is how we know with 100% certainty that Nichol was practicing some kind of witchcraft. The word witch gets thrown around a lot, but it can mean many things. Some use it to describe a practitioner of Wicca or other spiritual crafts, and others say it as a way to accuse someone of manipulation or spiritual influence. In Nichole's case, there's no confirmed evidence that she practiced Wicca or considered herself a witch, but she might have explored New Age ideas like crystal healing, energy work, or grounding, which do overlap with Wicca and Gaia worship in some ways. She could actually have been a practicing Wiccan, but the point is there's no proof to corroborate it. It's really important to remember that Wicca and Gaia-based beliefs are not inherently bad. In fact, they're about harmony and healing and a connection with nature. Theories about Nichole's spirituality might just reflect how people try to explain or make sense of unthinkable crimes. Nichol never publicly claimed to practice witchcraft, Wicca, or any kind of magical path. There's no record of her being part of a coven or a spiritual group, and we don't know enough about her to see if there were any patterns that matched modern witchcraft or occult behaviour. Some corners of the internet believe she may have been involved in black magic, ritual work, or even energy manipulation that influenced Chris's state of mind in the days leading up to the murders. Black magic is often defined as the use of supernatural or spiritual forces for selfish or harmful purposes. It contrasts with white magic, which is focused on healing, protection, or manifestation without harm. It's important to remember that not all witchcraft is black magic, but black magic is often what sparks fear. While the concept goes back literally thousands and thousands of years, there are some key moments in its evolution. Ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Curses were carved into tablets, buried in tombs, or whispered into clay figures meant to bring misfortune. We've all heard of the curse of Tutankhamun, right? The Middle Ages. The Christian Church criminalised any non-sanctioned magic. Women and outsiders were accused of black magic, sometimes just for owning herbs, talismans, or even books. And then there's the Renaissance and the grimoires. During the 15th to 17th centuries, these books included demon summoning, love domination rituals, and pacts with spirits or fallen angels. So here's what people online are saying, and again, these are their theories. Nichol might have performed rituals to bind Chris to her emotionally and sexually. She might have placed the crystals or performed spiritual cleansings in his home. She has given him drinks only for him, which some say were part of spiritual manipulation. And in the most extreme theory, she invoked a dark entity in his basement. There's no physical evidence of ritual activity, but some theorists claim that Chris described dark energy and sleep disturbances, and he was allegedly not himself in the final days. And apart from the internet creators that have taken these theories and blown them into actual working proof of evidence that Nichol manipulated Chris into killing his family through magic, the person who started all of this was Chris. In his February 2019 prison confession, months after the murders, Chris Watts said something that a lot of people found chilling. It was like there was a dark shadow over me. It was like I had someone else's hands over mine. We have the whole Sherilyn Cadle letters and Chris claiming that evil entered him and Sherilyn Cadle seemingly agreeing with his thoughts on that. Nichol noticed it too, because in her police interviews, she described something eerily specific as well. When she saw Chris on the news, standing in his driveway, asking for his family to come home, she says she almost didn't recognise him because she told investigators his eyes, they weren't the same. His eyes were different. She also said it was scary. Viewers watching that same interview noticed his blank stare, his flat affect, and his calm demeanour, which many found unnerving. Now, let's be clear, Chris has never claimed full demonic possession in the religious sense, but what he did describe is very similar to what some religious and spiritual traditions call oppression or influence. But what makes this case different is how often the idea of a dark force comes up, not just from outsiders, but from Chris and Nichol. So was Chris truly under spiritual influence? Or was it just the mind of a man spiralling into panic, lies, and guilt? Either way, what we're left with are the words of the killer, the fear of his mistress, and a public that still can't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. One theory that's been floating around certain corners of the internet is that Nichol Kessinger's father, Dwayne, may have been involved in occult practices, and some have even referred to him as a warlock. The term warlock itself is often misunderstood. Traditionally, it means oath-breaker, and it isn't commonly used by real-life male witches, especially not in Wiccan or neo-pagan circles. And a lot of the people who call him a warlock say that he was a Wiccan, so there's a little bit of confusion by some there. Let's be clear on this, there's no official documentation, legal record, or confirmed statement that Dwayne Kessinger practiced witchcraft or was part of any magical spiritual order like the O.T.O or a coven. Exactly the same for Nichol Kessinger. There's just no evidence anywhere. What we do know is that he was a protective parent who showed up to support his daughter during an incredibly public and stressful time. In online conspiracy circles, family involvement is a common theme. If someone is suspected of occult involvement, then their relatives are often all dragged into it too. Theories often focus on how people are protected by powerful insiders, and a father figure is seen as the perfect hidden handler. So when Dwayne sat next to Nichol during her police interview, calm, composed, and almost leading the conversation, it triggered something in the collective imagination. To some viewers, he wasn't just dad, he was a symbol of control, power, and dark knowledge. Whether it's about a spiritual bond, a generational occult link, or just a compelling mystery, this theory taps into something older than the case itself, and that's the idea that behind every unexplained tragedy is someone pulling the strings. So here's the question we all need to ask. When does exploring a mystery cross the line into actually creating one? It's natural to search for hidden meaning in crimes that feel senseless, and it's human to ask why. And when the official answers don't satisfy us, we reach for things that do. And in doing so, we actually risk blurring the line between the facts that we know and the stories that we need. Was Nichol just a woman caught in the chaos of Chris Watts' life? Or was she something more? A force, a spiritual guide, a manipulator? The truth is, we're really never going to know for sure. But the theory that she and her father were tied to black magic, secret societies and spiritual control has taken on a life all of its own. Not because of proof, but because of how the pieces of that theory makes us feel. So as we continue to explore this case, let's keep asking questions, but let's also stay grounded and know when we're crossing that invisible line between tragedy and legend, between reality and ritual, and between a crime and a curse. Nichol Kessinger's involvement in the Chris Watts case is a complex and emotionally charged topic. While she was involved in an affair with Chris, there's no evidence to suggest that she had any knowledge of his plans to murder his family or that she was physically involved. As we continue to explore the theories and anomalies surrounding this case, it's crucial to remember that real people are affected by our discussions. The victims, their families, and even those who were deceived by Chris deserve our respect and understanding. When DA Michael Rourke addressed the public after the sentencing of Chris Watts, he made a very clear statement. This is not a witch hunt. He was referring, of course, to the public frenzy surrounding Nichol Kessinger and the firestorm of rumours, theories and accusations that had already begun to spread. But here's the thing, that's exactly what it became. Because what followed was textbook. A woman placed at the edge of a horrific crime. No evidence tying her directly to it. And yet, she became the focus of suspicion, outrage and projection. Just like the women of Salem, or the European witch trials, or the tens of thousands of women throughout history accused of secret knowledge, dark influence and unseen powers, Nichol was dragged into the cultural imagination as not just the other woman, but as the witch. The parallels to the witch trials are actually really uncanny, and I'm not sure if D.A. Rourke actually knew what he was saying at the time, or how things would end up turning out. You know, he is a woman again accused of invisible crimes, influencing a man's mind, darkening his soul and seducing him into evil. She's speculated to have unnatural powers, using crystals and spiritual rituals, even curses, and she's subjected to relentless public judgment, not in a courtroom, but in the modern town square, YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, comment sections and email inboxes. In Salem, they didn't need proof, only fear, gossip and belief. And for some, that's still enough today. Witch hunts are about more than witches. They're about scapegoats. They're about explaining the unthinkable by blaming the woman who didn't fit, who didn't grieve publicly, who wasn't a mother, who was into weird stuff, who lied to cover her own backside, and who didn't look or act the way people expected the right kind of woman to. And that seems to be what's at the heart of this sometimes. Nichol Kessinger became a symbol, not just of betrayal, but of mystery and evil. So when D.A. Rourke said this is not a witch hunt, maybe he meant it, but the public didn't listen. Because deep down, society has never fully outgrown its obsession with the woman behind the man, the woman behind the sin, and the witch behind the crime. We might never know the full story of who Nichol really is, or what, if anything, she was involved in beyond her relationship with Chris. But in a case full of secrets, buried data and unanswered questions, it's not surprising that some do continue to look at every shadow for clues. What do you think? Is this occult stuff and black magic stuff all just a distraction from the real evidence? Or is it something really worth digging into? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you've seen proof, real proof, of this alleged connection to the O.T.O, we want to hear it. So let's break it down. Was she suspicious looking? Yes, absolutely. She deleted messages, she googled Shanann Watts before she claims to have ever known her name, she searched for wedding dresses and how much Amber Fry made on a book deal just days after the murders. She asked to speak to police off the record, and her timeline has inconsistencies. Did she help herself in the court of public opinion? Not even slightly. In fact, her behaviour has made her one of the most controversial figures in true crime discussions in recent years. And some of that she brought on herself. She didn't show public remorse. She didn't address the public directly. And she vanished into thin air with no accountability to the public who were demanding answers. Is she morally questionable for having an affair with a married man? Yes, she is. But she's far from the only person to ever make that mistake. Affairs happen. They're not illegal. They're often messy and emotionally complicated, and in her case, unfortunately, fatal for the wrong people. Nichol may have believed Chris was leaving Shanann. She may have believed his stories, but that doesn't change the fact that she was involved with a married man with 2 young daughters and a pregnant wife. But does any of this, the affair, the deleted messages, the odd search history, prove she helped kill anyone? No. There is no forensic evidence, no eyewitness testimony, no timeline that places her at the crime scene, and no messages from Chris indicating that she was part of a murder plan. Morally questionable? Sure. Criminally involved? There's no legal proof. Now, let's talk about these calls to reopen the case. Some channels, especially those dedicated almost entirely to Nichol, claim this case should be reopened, and they say that cold cases are reopened all the time. And yes, in the US, as in the UK, and lots of other places, cold cases can be reopened if new and credible evidence emerges. Things like DNA, a confession, a credible witness who was previously unknown, or major flaws in the original investigation. But here's the legal reality. This isn't a cold case. There's a conviction. Chris Watts confessed. He entered a guilty plea voluntarily in exchange for life in prison without the death penalty. That deal was accepted. There was no trial, and he waived his right to appeal. There's no ambiguity in the legal sense. So unless Chris himself recants his confession and provides evidence that someone else was involved, or credible new physical evidence surfaces that contradicts everything already gathered, this case will not reopen. Not for Nichol, not for anyone. And even if a new district attorney is elected in Weld County, they can't just decide to reopen a closed, adjudicated case without clear, admissible, and new legal grounds. That's how the justice system works. Emotion and suspicion don't count, only evidence. So yes, Nichol's behaviour raises eyebrows. Yes, she's been evasive. Yes, she's been called out for her contradictions. And yes, she's paid a heavy social price for being involved with Chris Watts. But as of right now, there's no legal basis to say that she had anything to do with the murders themselves. And unless that changes in the form of solid, verifiable proof, this case is not going anywhere, legally or otherwise. That wraps up our final look into Nichol Kessinger, folks. While she's been at the centre of public suspicion, we have to remember being morally questionable doesn't automatically make someone criminally guilty. I know many of you wanted this series to continue, but it's really important that we don't let one person dominate the narrative. There are still critical areas in this case that need to be explored, from the autopsy reports to inconsistencies in the investigation and even lesser known facts that tend to get buried. The next episode will take us into one of the most highly debated documents in the case, the autopsy reports. Prepare for a factual breakdown, a look at what's missing and what might matter more than we realise. Let me know in the comments, do you think Nichol played a bigger role, or has the focus on her become a distraction from what really happened? Share your thoughts, your theories, or just your reflections below. I read them all and reply to as many as I can, even if not right away. Thank you to all my wonderful subscribers and those of you just popping in. I'll see you all in the next video, but in the meantime, stay curious, stay kind, and take care of yourselves. I've been Fiona, and this has been Case Continued.